Las Vegas Historical Moments, 1800s. People have lived in the Nevada area for at least the last 10,000 years. Spanish explorers were the first Europeans to interact with the Southern Paiutes in the 1700s, and they still live here today. The Paiutes lived in small groups in the local mountains and moved into the valley when it was too cold in the winter. Occasionally, they would gather into bigger groups for trading purposes. This was the winter home of the Paiutes, where they would get water from the Las Vegas springs that flowed out of the ground. By 1962, the water stopped flowing. After the Mexican War of Independence, the Nevada area became part of Alta California in the territory of Mexico in 1824. The first American to arrive in what is now Clark County is explorer and fur trapper Jedediah Smith on November 18, 1826. Smith arrived in Mesquite, about 80 miles northeast of Las Vegas on the Arizona border. Trappers and traders began to cross over the Paiute land, and the Old Spanish Trail was established in 1829, which is a trade route from New Mexico to California. In the winter of 1829, Antonio Armijo led a trading party from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Southern California. 18-year-old Rafael Rivera broke off from the group and discovered the springs in southern Nevada and called the area Las Vegas, which means the meadows in Spanish. Rafael Rivera is believed to be the first non-native to discover Las Vegas. Army Major General John C. Fremont hired guide Kit Carson, and they arrived at the Las Vegas Springs on May 3, 1844, and mapped the Old Spanish Trail in the Las Vegas area. This literally put Las Vegas on the map, which was printed by the U.S. Congress and was widely used by the U.S. Army. After the Mexican-American War in 1848, the U.S. took over most of the Southwest. In 1850, the Las Vegas area was in the New Mexico territory. Nevada was the last part of the American West that pioneers settled. In 1852, United States mail contractor George Chorpinian built a mail station, which was the first non-native structure in Las Vegas. Mormon Church President Brigham Young wanted to establish a Mormon mission along the Mormon Trail every 20 miles between Salt Lake City, Utah, and San Bernardino, California. So Brigham Young sent 35 men to Las Vegas to establish a fort in 1855. 29 men left Salt Lake City on May 10th, and 6 men joined the group on the way to Las Vegas before they arrived on June 14, 1855. William Bringhurst was the president of the Las Vegas Mormon Mission, and they built the first permanent settlement in Las Vegas. The 150-square-foot adobe fort included the first permanent home, which still stands today at the Old Las Vegas Mormon Fort State Historic Park on Las Vegas Boulevard, about 1 mile north of Fremont Street. The left side of this building is the original home built in 1855, and the rest to the right is a reproduction of the original building. The Mormons abandoned the fort 2 years later with Brigham Young's blessing because of problems growing crops in the poor soil, the extreme summer heat, fights with each other and the Paiutes, along with problems developing a mine nearby. In 1861, the northeast part of Nevada became part of the Utah Territory. The Las Vegas area was still in the New Mexico Territory, while the rest became part of the Nevada Territory. The Nevada Territory name was shortened from the Sierra Nevada, which in Spanish means snow-covered mountain range. On October 31, 1864, Nevada became the 36th state. President Abraham Lincoln thought he needed Nevada to win re-election 8 days later, and he thought he needed Nevada to pass the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery, but Nevada wasn't necessary. When Nevada became a state with about 10,000 people, the Las Vegas area was part of the Arizona Territory. Octavius Gass bought the Las Vegas Mormon Fort with Nate Lewis and Louis Cole in 1865, and Gass bought out his 2 partners 2 years later. Gass renamed the fort Las Vegas Rancho, so that people would not confuse the place with Las Vegas, New Mexico, and this was the first ranching activity in the valley. By 1878, he would own all the land that had above-ground water. In 1866, the western portion of the Utah Territory became part of Nevada. 1 year later, in 1867, the Las Vegas area became part of Nevada because the state legislature thought that Nevada could better handle the future population growth due to a recent discovery of gold in the area. In 1869, the Nevada legislature overrode a veto by Governor Blasdell to legalize gambling. The two state regulations required a license from the county sheriff, and gambling could not be conducted in the front room of a building. Eventually, gambling was limited to the second story of a building in larger counties. Octavius Gass was having financial problems and was unable to sell the ranch, so he got a $5,000 loan from Archibald Stewart in 1879. 1 year later, he defaulted on the loan, so Archibald took over the ranch with his wife, Helen Stewart, and it was eventually renamed the Stewart Ranch. The Stewarts lived 170 miles away in Pioche, Nevada, and Archibald decided in 1882 that they would move to Las Vegas to take care of the struggling ranch. Helen didn't want to leave civilization and go to Las Vegas, which had no doctors, no school for the kids, and no women settlers. Archibald promised Helen that they would move back to Pioche in a couple years when the ranch was more stable. But 2 years later, Archibald Stewart was killed in a gunfight at the Kyle Ranch, about 2 miles north of the Stewart Ranch. This was the first murder in Las Vegas, and the murderer never went to trial. Helen believed that Hank Parrish was responsible for the murder, and 7 years later, he died by hanging in Ely, Nevada, for another crime. Helen Stewart, who was a teacher, had 4 kids and was 3 months pregnant with her 5th child when she was forced to operate a large ranch with no experience in ranching or business because she was unable to find a buyer for the ranch. She quickly learned the ranching business and developed the Stewart Ranch into a rest stop for travelers while raising crops and livestock with the help from employees, including employees from the Paiute tribe. In 1889, railroad surveyors came to town and Stewart started buying land in anticipation of a railroad being built through the valley. Helen became the first postmaster in 1893, and Las Vegas was spelled with an O until 1903 so that the town would not be confused with Las Vegas, New Mexico. Helen started with 960 acres when her husband was murdered. 16 years later, in 1900, she had doubled her land to about 1,800 acres, and she was the largest landowner in southern Nevada. At the turn of the century, there were about 30 non-native people living in Las Vegas.